Hello everybody and welcome. This is Roland from graphicINmotion. In this tutorial I want to show you how to create something like this. You see, it is kind of an abstract dance of towels or whatever this is, and I just created this with After Effects and Element 3D version 1.5. And version 1.5 is important because it enables us to import OBJ sequences into Element, which was not possible before. So now we can import animated objects and can create really crazy things. And I have to mention that I came across this idea when I was surfing through the internet, and I came to a channel of a guy called Style. And I like to watch his videos. He's a Cinema 4D specialist from Germany. And he made kind of this animation within Cinema 4D. And this gave me the idea that now we are able to create something like this with After Effects, because we can use Element 3D version 1.5 to import these meshes, these animated meshes. So I more or less took over the idea from Mr. Style, and I just changed a little bit the workflow to create it inside After Effects. But at first we have to create this object inside Cinema 4D. And this part is more or less very similar to what Style does in his tutorial, but it's a little bit different, and I will leave it a little bit more basic and a little bit more easy, because we will do the most part of the animation inside After Effects later. So in Cinema 4D we just have to create a plane first. So let's create a plane, and we will just change the settings a little bit. I want this to be a little bit smaller, so let's set it to 400 times 280. And I just want to change the mesh structure to triangles instead of squares, because it works a little bit better with the cloth tag. First of all, of course, I have to make it editable. And now I can go to Mesh and Commands and set it to triangulate. And now I have to select some vertices to get some fixed points inside this mesh. So let's say I will just select a few vertices here in the middle. Oops, sorry, I just want to have circle selection, yes. Okay. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like this is good. Okay, now I have to add a cloth tag to my plane. Simulation text, cloth tag, and now I have to set my fixed point. So with the selected vertices I go to dresser and set fixed points. And now when we just start this animation, you will see what will happen. These points are now fixed and the others are reacting to our gravity, of course. So we need to change some settings here, and I want to change the forces. First of all, I want to turn down the gravity to about -2, so that it's really low gravity. And I need a little bit of a strong wind here, because I want, of course, this direction to be influenced by a stronger wind. So I will set this to 4, and I will set the Y wind direction, which comes from below here, to 1, and this to 0. I don't need any X direction or Z direction. And I set the overall strength to 4. And now let's see what this does. So you see we get, I have to increase the frame count here, let's say to 350. And now expand it, and now I have a little bit more time to let this simulation work. And in fact, it's maybe a little bit heavy. I mean, it's kind of nice, but maybe it's a little bit too heavy, reacting too much. So we'll maybe lower the strength here a little bit. Let's say 3.5 or even 3. I don't know yet. I will try. Give it a try like this. And I think this is pretty good. So now what we want to do is to bake this animation, because I don't want the cloth tag in here. I just want to bake all this animation. So therefore I just go back to my object mode, and I will go to Character Manager and Cappuccino. And now we will select the PLA. I do not really know what it means, but it is the mesh structure or the polygon positions or whatever. So we don't want the position of the object, we don't want the scale and the rotation of the object because these don't change obviously. We want the PLA to be baked. And now I just have to click on Start Real Time and click inside my window. And now Cinema 4D will calculate this animation for me. And you already see that I'm doing kind of a basic or a simple simulation here with a lot of big polygons because, you know, I just want this to work for the tutorial. If you want to have a nice look, then you probably should subdivide this, or you can do this later on when we are adding a cloth tag, but we will see. So now we can just get rid of the cloth tag. As you can see, just delete it, and we should have still our animation here. We still have it, and this is pretty cool. So the next thing I want to do is I want to hide more or less this part of this mesh here because it doesn't look that great. So we will just add taper effector, make it a child of our plane, and set the size to a high value like 80, 98 or whatever, 97. Of course we have to rotate it first, so rotate it to 90 degrees, minus 90 degrees. And now just move it so to the start of our mesh here. Kind of like this. And now we take a look what this looks like. And I think this is pretty good. Okay, so final step within Cinema 4D. We just have to add one more thing, and this is a cloth NURBS here. And just drag in our plane into the cloth NURBS, and I will set the cloth NURBS to, to subdivision 2, so that it gets a little bit more smooth. And I also want to set the thickness to 0.2. And now let's see how this looks. Looks kind of good, but what I should do probably is to change the font to a higher value, because otherwise we get these really hard edges here. So let's deactivate this for a moment and just see how this changes our look. You know, when you have the font tag to a low value, you will get very strange results. So let's increase it to maybe 180, I don't know, let's see. Yeah, let's do it like this. I think this is a little bit better. And now the cloth NURBS, subdivision 2, and we can change this to limit, but no, it doesn't make any differences. So just leave it like this. Okay, so now we can render out our OBJ sequence, and you can do this with a plugin. I don't know how much possibilities we have. I only know one plugin to export OBJ sequences from Cinema 4D. And this is a plugin that ships with the Plexus plugin. You probably know Plexus. It's this plugin for After Effects where you can create these points and these line structures and everything. And shipping with this plugin, there is an exporter. I will show you this. This is Plexus OBJ Sequence Exporter. And I think they also sell it separately, but I'm not quite sure. So just Google it, you know, Google OBJ sequence export, and maybe you'll find something else. And if you find something, leave a comment. I will be interested in that, but I have to use my OBJ sequence. So just let's render this out. And therefore I will just okay. I thought it will crash, fortunately it didn't. So let's go to our cloth tutorial and make a new ordner. Tutorial OBJ sequence. Okay, and same here. And now Cinema 4D will render this out. Okay, so this is it for now in Cinema 4D, and we'll see us in After Effects in a minute. Okay, now I am in After Effects, and first of all, of course, I have to create a new composition, and I will use the HDTV 1080 25 frames, and just call this main for now, and make it 250 frames of duration, so 10 seconds. And first of all, I want to create a new layer and call this element 3D. And I want to add elements to this layer. And now I will press Scene Setup and import my OBJ sequence. So you go to File, Import 3D Sequence, and now I can move to my... Here's the OBJ sequence, and I just select the first one and click Open. And immediately you see that something is here. So what do we have? We have start frame number 1 and frame 351. And if we change this or scrub through, you see that we have the animation. Really cool. But we don't want, first of all, we don't want the start of the animation to be at frame 1, because it's just starting to get interesting at around, let's say, frame number 50, or no, let's say, in fact, let's say frame number 30. So I want the start to be frame number 30 and set this back to 0. So now if you take a look at this, we see that we are missing something. We have no shadows here, you know, it's just a plain mesh, and we really get no shadows, and this has to do with the normals. So we have to go to Model Surface in Mapping and just change the orthonormals, or just activate the orthonormals. And now what we see is that we have our structure back. And another issue can happen here, or is happening here, is if you take a close look here, we have some problems with our polygons here. So, and the problem here is the edge threshold, and this is more or less the same as the font tag in Cinema 4D. So you can determine at this value, or with this value, which angle of two polygons element 3D will create a sharp edge, you know. And now it's set to 33, so it's kind of a narrow angle, and I want to increase this angle now. So just let's increase this angle. And now you see that it gets smoother, you know, and this is what we want. So we can increase it just to 180, because we nearly don't want any hard angles here. So now it's looking way more smooth, as you see. Oops, sorry, now I changed the wrong value. And looking way better already. Okay, so this is more or less it already inside Element 3D. What we can do, of course, is change a little bit the default material, but I really don't want to do much here. Just set the diffuse color to maybe not quite 100% white, because this is always a little bit unrealistic. And just set the specular to a really low value, so 0.1 and also 0.1 here, so that you have a little bit, but really only a bit. And now I just press OK, and you see that my towel now appears inside my preview, and this is great. So now what we can do is to go to our group 1, because again, let's take a look. We see that our towel is part of the group 1, so we have to deal with group 1, and there I set the particle replicator to a count of 12. And I also want these particles to be shaped on a ring. And now you can see what we have here. So let's add a camera. And I want to have a 2-noded camera in this case. Okay. And just press AA to get rid of the depth of field for now. And now we can just move it around and take a look at what's happening here. And now when you scroll through the timeline, you can see that our towels already are dancing around, which already is pretty cool. But we want to improve this a little bit and just make it look a little bit more interesting. So we'll animate a few parameters here. So first of all, we want to animate the rotation of the whole thing here. So I go to rotation and set a keyframe at the X and the Y rotation at frame number 1, of course. And now we'll move to frame number 250 and set it to 1 rotations and Y 2 rotations. And now you can see what this does. We're getting some movement here and exactly what I want here. Okay, and now I just want to change these keyframes so that they're a little bit more interesting. So let's change these here to keyframe assistant and ease out, and these here to ease in. And what this does is, of course, make the curve shape a little bit more smooth. So it starts off a little bit slower and it will end also a little bit slower. So the next thing that we will change is the orientation of our towels, because if you take a look now, they are just kind of overlapping each other too much, and I want to change the rotation of my particles. So let's just see. Therefore I have to go to my particle look now, and here I have again a rotation control, and this now controls the single, or the single element. And when I go to the rotation here, you see I can also make something very interesting or interesting shapes, but I'm searching the Y rotation for now. This is exactly what I want, and set this to 90 for now. And now we can go back to our particle replicator, and now when I change my scale shape, you will see that I get these. I can change the size of the ring they're orientated on. So let's do some random animations here. So let's start off with something like they're close together. So let's set a keyframe here. Let's make it 15 keyframe. And then let's say they are just separating a little bit within 2 seconds. Make them a little bit bigger to 20. And then I just want to really should close together and form some kind of a weird shape here. And then 2 seconds later, they can just separate again a little bit. And now in the end we will increase the separation again. And in the end they should really be part of each other or away from each other. So now I just will reset my camera and see what now is happening. And you see now they are just floating around and dancing quite strange. So far so good. So I kind of like this, it looks quite good. So what possibilities will we have here? I just want to change, or I just want to show you some of the values you could change here. So we can go into Element 3D. So inside our particle look, there is this baked animation feature, and you see that there are loop modes. And I want to change this mode to freeze at the end, because then it would just loop once or only play through once the animation, so the OBJ sequence, and then it just will stop. And this is what I want because I didn't create a loop, so looping makes not much sense for me. What else you can do is you could, if you are creating a loop, which of course is possible when you bake in animation because you create keyframes, and then you could of course create a loop too. You could, for example, random loop. If you put it to random loop, you can see what's happening. Now every of these elements is on another point of their animation, and this gives it a variation and a more organic look. So if you want to create something more realistic, let's say, then you probably would change or would use this setting and create loops. But of course, for me, it's not important because what I want to create is absolutely not realistic. It's just artistic, and it's kind of a motion graphics or some abstract shape. So I will just leave it like this. But what I could do, and what I maybe will do, is just change these rotations of the single elements a little bit. For example, here, in the end, I want the rotation of these particles. So be sure that you are inside the particle look settings here. Maybe to be a little bit like this, you know, so that they are changing their rotation a little bit. And I would set a keyframe here. And when they come together, I want them just maybe to form a shape like this. So I will just change the orientation of these a little bit, but in the beginning, of course, I want them also to have slightly this shape. And what else can we do? We can set the random rotation to a small value, maybe only 2 or 3, and this should be fine, because then it's not 100% the same and creates a little bit of a different look. Another option to make this a little bit more interesting is to change the random, or to change the position a little bit. And therefore we have an offset, and I'm not quite sure where this is, but I think it is it angle? No, definitely not. Rotation noise, it's not rotation. I'm inside rotation. I don't want to be inside rotation. I want to be inside the position. This should be maybe on the multiple objects. No. So we have scattering, position X, Y, Z. That's what I'm searching for. So scatter X, Y, Z. And you can just change this a little bit. For example, if I scatter the Y position a little bit, you see that now my shapes are changing their Y position. And this gives it a little bit more of an organic feeling. So maybe we just give it a little bit of values here so that it's not so flat and not so artificial. It still is, but you know, just to give it a little bit of a variation. And of course you could animate these or just put in a wiggle effect or whatever so that they are floating around a little bit and scattering. And you see you could also just turn on the scatter effect here, and then they will just automatically change their position a little bit, but I don't want to do this. So let's turn it back to 0. Okay, now we are going to make this look a little bit more interesting. So first of all, I want to get a background here. So let's import a file. And open it up, and this is kind of a nice sky here. And I want to set this 3D, and I want to scale it up a lot. Let's first position it, because I want to position it in the back of the whole thing here, so to 5000. And now I just scale it up as we need. I need a little bit more room on the left and on the right, because I want to move the camera slightly later on. And now we try to composite this, so make our towels to fit in the background. And you see now, of course, this doesn't work at all. So we have to work a little bit on this. So first of all, what I want to do is to go into my particle replicator, or in my particle look here. And I want to change the opacity here. So I want to change it to, let's say, 85. So we get a slight opacity here, because it makes it a little bit more realistic, okay? So, and now we need to create some lighting, and we need some lights to more or less simulate our natural lighting scene that we have. So you see that this scene consists of very orange and purple colors, and so I will create some lights in the same colors. So therefore I will just create light number 1. And light number 1 should be a point light, and should kind of have this orange color here. And intensity 100 is good for now. And you see immediately we have a big change, but what I don't want is that my background is influenced by this light. So I will press AA here and turn off the accept lights and turn off the accept shadows. Okay. And now I have to reposition my light, because I want to also simulate the directions that the lights have in this scene. So I go to my 4 views here and just increase this a little bit. to have more space. And now we go to the top view, and you see that the orange light is coming kind from the right side and a little bit from behind. So I want to move my light here, move it to the right and just move it a little bit back. And you see that immediately we have a way more natural and interesting look, but of course it's not what we want. We probably need to change the color a little bit, make it more orange, so that we get a little bit more of an intense orange look, like this. And maybe even increase this light's intensity. Okay, so now I just want to duplicate this light, Ctrl D, and press AA here, because I definitely want to make this a really weaker light to 15%, because I want this light to just fill up these dark spots here. You know, it's not that natural that in a scene like this we have such dark spots here. So I will just take this light and move it over here, and maybe also move it a little bit to the top. So this is only a light that is filling in some of the dark spots here, and I will only just move this a little bit down, because my intense orange light is coming from, you see, from here. You know, the sun will be around here. So I just want to move this a little bit down to simulate this. And maybe I will just put this a little bit more, no, a little bit more down to, just to give it this slight fill of the shadows. So if we, yeah, you see what this light does, and this is very important to the overall look. Okay, and now I need another light, and this light should come from our purple sky here. So I will just duplicate this light, and I will move it to the back here, and then I will move it a little bit up, and maybe also a little bit to the left here. And now I want to change the color from this light. Press AA and change it to this purple. And maybe just increase the intensity a little bit. And now you see immediately what this does. So it gives it a little bit of a purple shine here. And this is what we want. So in fact, if we take a look at it, it's not perfect yet, but it looks not that bad, you know. So I want to change the colors a little bit. So I want to make this a little bit more intense. And I also want to make light number 1 more orange, because this will help to sell the effect and get the look right. Yeah, it's getting better, you see. Okay, and now I think that we are kind of done. Let's try to take a look at our animation. So in fact, it doesn't look that bad. I just want to do some small changes, and therefore I will just use color correction. So I will just apply some RGB curves here. So let's go back to one view and just select or just add curves and put it on our element layer here. And I will just try to match the look a little bit better. So first of all, I want the bright spots to be a little bit brighter. And I want the dark spots to be a little bit darker to increase the contrast a little bit. Not too much, not too much. Be gentle, you know, careful. Okay, now we want to add maybe a little bit of red to this scene, you know, because the whole thing is pretty red. And now you see that we are going in the right direction here. Not too much, always gentle, you know. And now we can remove some of the green maybe. Very gentle, and add a little bit of blue maybe. And now you see that the look is not that bad, you know, it looks pretty natural. The lighting is not bad. It's maybe a little bit too much, but for now I'm really satisfied with this. So what else can we make to give this a more interesting or more natural look? We can change the camera position a little bit. So let's give it a little bit of a wiggle. Position, wiggle, let's say wiggle about 0.4, 100 parentheses. And I also want to change the zoom options a little bit. So let's say wiggle 0.3 and 180. So because then we have a little bit of a movement. See how this looks. I see it's not that bad. So it's just getting a little bit more interesting for us. Okay, then of course I also want to change the depth of field. So let's turn this on and let's change this to 1800 and the aperture to about 75 to get a little bit a narrower depth of field, as you can see, to make it even look a little bit better. And another thing I want to do is to add some motion blur. So I will just enable the motion blur on my element 3D layer and also in the composition. And now we will get a motion blur at these points where the towels are moving faster. Okay, so I think this is it. So I hope that you at least got a little bit of an impression of the new possibilities with element 1.5 only by the option of importing new or importing OBJ sequences, and you see what is possible now. I mean, this is a kind of a simple and in this case very senseless possibility, but you see what you can do with this. You know, you could of course create something completely different with these techniques. So I'm really always interested in what you guys create from my tutorials. So please, if you do something nice, upload it on YouTube and put a link onto the comments to this tutorial. I'm always happy if I get some feedback. So if you need more tutorials or After Effects templates or whatever, visit my site www.graphicINmotion.com, and I really hope to see you soon. Have a nice time. Goodbye.